Thank you for choosing to be here tired. Thank you for being tired together with me. What I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about tokens and how value flows are enough for governance and for defining organization, departments, and their future direction. And it's going to be a little bit abstract. I'm going to try to make you think some weird things, and in the final I'm going to show you some slides of some screenshots of how the application actually works, and I hope you have more questions about that. I'm going to start by, like, last time I did a presentation in Cluj, I did like my master's degree, and I did the thing where I analyzed like parliamentary transcripts, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. The two main fundamental things are words and counting. But I'm not going to talk about counting words, but like these are like the two fundamental thinking patterns, and I'm going to put them in opposition. I'm going to argue that counting is superior to words because most of our governance is word-based, and I want to make it like funding and like counting and comparing things and distribution flows. So some of the weird things, like imagine all the people, in the sense that imagine you're a coin, and you feel all the transactions that are happening with you. You buy Covery Dog, it feels in one way. You buy two Covery Dogs, it's the same feeling, but like more intense. Issuance feels in a certain way, right? You kind of feel that the coin is alive, is a living organism, and people interact with you anarchically, right? They don't need permission to interact with you, so on and so forth. So the first, is money the first blockchain, or just happened for the first blockchain to be money, which is a stupid question because Vitalik tried to invent money, but he also in the process invented blockchain, and that's what happens when you try to disintermediate human coordination and interactions. A critique about coins, I'm going to say that coins are DAOs. That's like the main argument that I'm going to make. And one of the critique of coins is, one, they're all like, to use an industry term, they're shit coins. But most of the coins in history are shit coins. These are like all coins from like south of Turkey. They're still shit coins, but they're fossilized and they have a historical value, so on and so forth, but they're still kind of useless. And in terms of coins being DAOs, like all these nation state are, so if you live in a country and you have your life savings into a coin, like you're part of that organization, what happens with the coin affects you directly, and you can also affect like the state of the coin and so on. So like in this sense, like coins are organizations. Butchers, brewers, bakers, Adam Smith are sequencers. Coins are decentralized autonomous organizations. This like happens permissionlessly, even though it's a central issuer. Like all the things like happen permissionlessly and anarchically and without, asynchronously, and so on and so forth. The status quo, proposal-based governance. This is a quote from someone that is a big, actually, it's when I started work on this, like one of the things that motivated me, we were talking about proposals, and they say that everybody hates proposals. And the issue with proposals is that they're skeuomorphic, functionally they're laws. So what happened is that we were asked to create governance for the blockchain, and the only thing we could imagine is to transpose the existing governance paradigm onto the blockchains. So we could only imagine laws, like pieces of text that we put in the center and we all vote on. And this is not native to the blockchain. Leads to apathy, decentralization, and parliamentarism. That's why certain DAOs like incentivize governance participation, which creates some weird incentive issues. Decentralization, right? You end up with DAO delegates, which are also kind of like representatives in a parliament. Parliamentarism, okay. Collapses to corporate bureaucracy. If you look on any like DAO forum, you will see that you get all kinds of, it becomes highly bureaucratic. It becomes, there's budgets, there's KPIs. I, for one, think that we can do much better, and governance is the end game, as Paolo said. I'm not here for a change advisory board, right? I'm not here to participate, to recreate all those like shapes and paper-based, paper-rooted, paper-grounded shapes and processes. Paper devices can't on chain. They're not native to the chain. They're not native to a decentralized, permissionless medium. And we should maybe try to attempt to move beyond that, to ground our designing governance imaginations beyond patterns that are rooted to settle on paper. While man can jump, that's a stereotype, it's also a movie. Paper devices can't on-chain, parliamentarism can't internet. And this is a lot of context to process. If you go on any like DAO governance forum, you cannot get very fast an idea of what's happening there, right? There's all these texts that are kind of laws that are voted, they're very long, you could in theory use AI to summarize everything for it, but even that is somewhat problematic because there's already like a top layer of interpretation, and that's also somewhat problematic, but I'm not gonna go into that. Okay, so how I think DAOs should look, they should look, this is one cell, this is a unicellular organism, and it does things, it's alive. Things should look more alive in the same way that, I don't know, like for example, the Ethereum blockchain is in theory alive. So organizations should look, we should be like a small thing inside this thing, and we all signal our wanted direction and fund towards that direction, and the organization is alive and moves continuously without the need for sequencing the governance, the settlement, because voting on proposals is actually kind of a sequencing mechanism for settling like the next direction. It should be anarchic and it should move continuously, have reinforcement loops. Organizations are memories that move forward. That's like my definition of being queued. Because you need, in order to have an organization, you need to have a membrane to determine who is in the organization, who is not in the organization. That's like the most basic component. That move forward. What forward is what is governance is for. How you determine what that forward is. That's the output of governance. Forward determinations can be permissionless and instant. So again, back to the coin, like when you spend the coin or whatever you do, like the coin itself doesn't really have a mission, a forward in theory, but that's just because we don't ascribe like values, our passions, our wants, our needs into it, but the coin does this thing, does the sequencing, does changes state, has state transition functions, so on and so forth. So more anarchic. We'll use the systematizing order for instant, permissionless, disincentivized governance. It puts value flows into an order that is anyone can participate and has free entry and exit. It's disincentivized. Someone has to pay in an organization for change. If you want to change something, you better pay for it. And there's many reasons why that's so, but incentivizing governance participation creates weird incentives, and someone has to pay for change. If you want it, pay for it. Permissionless, disincentive governance. Okay. The main funding mechanism is governed by funding. You pay for change, you fund like specific nodes, goals, the direction in which you want to push the body of the organization. Or working when needed, you can create a node in the structure. And if your work is valuable for the organization, you get redistributive flows towards the work that you're doing. It's legible and intuitive. When you have only token quantities, it's very easy to summarize the state of the organization. You can just watch a chart and see, like you see that unicellular organism, like move towards it forward. You can also see how the organization moves in real time by people signaling their preferences and allocating resources. Gives coins organizational competencies. This all is token nested in the sense that each token is a DAO, but under that token you get nested nodes of value and specialization and so on and so forth. It distributes fungibility of arbitrary value as signal for communal configuration, accommodates plurality, enhances legibility of the commons, and empowers individuals to credibly and continuously commit to political and economic outcomes. So you can create a node in a specific context. I don't know, marketing. You do a marketing campaign, you create a node. If nobody knows you in that organization, you won't get any flows. But if you have a good idea, someone might give you like, I don't know, 1 RON. But in time as you work, you update like what you're doing, you link documents, you link proof of work. They can change their allocation, increase it or decrease it in real time, depending of how they interpret your work as contributed to the organization. Who gives how much, for what, to whom, is of value and of interest to any part of the organization. Resource distribution being like the most contentious thing in an organization. If the company that you work for suddenly decides to use next year's budget to buy Dogecoin, right? It's an issue for you. I mean, so how the organization distributes the resources, how it allocates resources is of concern to everyone that is part of that organization. So on-chain fungibility can encode, enforce, and articulate power relations without precedent, clarity, and efficiency. Even simple coins in theory, there's 18 zeros there, you can put some stuff, and like only coin transfers could emerge to have a complex coordination. Vitalik, our Lord and Savior, said this like 2 weeks ago, which was quite interesting. Burn down the legitimacy of existing paradigms, reopen the Overton window, multi-level structures are good. And that's kind of how this works. So if you go to the app, these are like all the coins that you have in your wallet. You click on one of the coins and I'll show you what you see. You see the state of the entire coin, what the coin is doing. All the nodes, what they are doing, how it distributes value, how it, in theory, the coin acts. And you can create a node. At the root level, anyone can create a node, but these nodes are nested. And in order to create a node within a node, you need to be a member in it. And this has like membership conditions that are enforced on-chain. Everything is on-chain. Characteristics, membership, and inflation rate. An inflation rate is an economic protective mechanism. What the node spends is the inflation. So you could mint into a node, you can then burn, but you'll always remove less value than you deposit, because the inflation is what pays for the change, what is redistributed by that node to its subnodes, to its activities of interest. So here we have like activities, activity logs to see what happened in the specific node. Movements, this is like traditional on-chain governance to execute other external contracts. Signals is where, if you are a member of a node, you have value in that node and power. You signal how to redistribute value to subnodes of that node in which you are a member. So you redistribute percentages of inflation. You put like 0.96%, 1, whatever, what's your preference. You submit it, and the nodes, when you submit that transaction, the rate, the share of inflation that they get is recalculated, and they can then withdraw. Control, there's membrane ID. The membrane is, organizations are membranes that move forward. The membranes are one, the identity, like the name, the characteristics of the node, but also the conditions to be a member. This can also be changed, and here there's you need a majority of shares to change this. This is not a very good example, but it should do. So one point that I want to make here, so I just search for a coin. I sell the coin, and this is like what the coin does. These are all like the value flows. It could be better, but just to drive up the point home of how the economic interactions work. These are nested, so if I burn these shares get have a deposit of are backed by this, and this also has shares. Then when I burn the shares of this are backed by this, and so on. So at each step you get diluted, and this is so to prevent like weird economic attacks. Yes. So there's a function, it's called burn path and mint path, that does all this recursive, and ultimately you withdraw and deposit like the ERC20, the actual ERC20. Okay, this is one of my favorite quotes. This is DeHock, the founder of Visa, very underrated thinker. Without question, the most abundant, least expensive, most underutilized and constantly abused resource in the world today is human ingenuity. The source of that abuse is mechanistic industrial age hierarchical domination, concepts of organization, and the management practices they spawn. Okay. I hope you have questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Bogdan. Again, if anybody has questions, feel free to put your hand up or go through the QR code. So maybe a question from me to start things off. Which areas of the industry are in most need of change in line with what you're describing here, would you say?
I think on-chain coordination possibilities are very limited through reproducing the existing governance structures and putting the things in nature, like the cells in your body do not create small pieces of text and they send it to the brain, and the brain asks every other cell in your body to accept or reject that signal, right? They work together locally, and they speak to all other at all times. So I think there's the point of blockchain and the biggest potential is definitely governance. And I think we can do much better to govern all the things because it's very much so needed. In terms of who could benefit, all DAOs, but particularly all coin holders, because coins are DAOs.
Coins are DAOs. I love that. It's a great tagline. And there's a question on the board. Are there any is there any government out there that's tried this or something similar from proof of stake in 1999?
If by government you mean nation state, I would say no, but I could also make a case that, I don't know, whatever they do, budgeting or whatever, kind of fits that, but I'm not going to force it that way. In terms of experiments that are similar, there are some things that have happened over time. There's, for example, Coordinape. It's a project, but it was mainly off-chain, where people like assigned points every month or something like that, and like they redistributed their allocated budget for that period. But and there's also HAT protocol that uses, for example, membranes, kind of, but nothing that is a systematizing order in this sense that is grounded into a token.
Would you say there are any other ecosystems apart from Ethereum where you're seeing alignment with these kind of values?
Probably not. The current app is on Base, and it's on Base because there's some complex logic that might be very expensive for mainnet. But no, I think the Ethereum has the only cypherpunk decentralization values of disintermediation, so on and so forth. It's hard to, yes, it will be a weaker base for something like this. The foundation will be a lot more shaky. So I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions from the crowd, guys, before we close up? Oh, over there. Coming over to you, sir.
Getting back on on that question, I think the question would be: would a state that is based only on money survive?
Yes. Okay. So it's not really based only on money, right? The nodes have labels, they have like links to docs and so on, and that information is also governed over. You need a majority of like tokens to, but your question is somewhat fair. This is hyper-financializing governance in a way, but it's not betting, it's you have to pay to govern. So the only way to participate in this, there's little point to participate in it for speculatory reasons, because in order to have any effect and any impact on it and on others is to actually pay. So, yeah, I don't have that concern. I think all work needs to be paid, for example, and the problem is that there's externalities. For example, I think we talked once about volunteering, if you remember. Yeah.
It's better for smaller communities. Government is a very big deal. But if you have just you and your neighbor want to change something in your small community.
I think there should be coins for absolutely anything that's local coordination, that's common, that's you want to do something with other people, you should create a coin. That's a power that we have today. And it's a power that's not much understood and is very powerful. So you should create a coin, and then you can use this to redistribute and organize anarchically with your neighbors. You don't have to write chat messages. You can just do things and start doing things. And if they're of value, you'll get paid. And the people that want to have that to happen will redistribute like flows to it. And you'll get like a direct image like that is intuitive and fast. You just see the chart and see how that initiative overall represented by the coin like evolves over time. And I think that's very valuable.
It's like anarchy with a structure, so with some kind of structure.
Yeah, it's structure. It's yeah, it's to quote someone, anarchy is order.
You sure you want to ask a question?
No, we had an argument earlier. Like, I wasn't sure if you were trying to tell us about this tool to use in your local community, or if you're doing for a talk that is more philosophical. Because on a philosophical standpoint, that looks like a plutocracy to me, which is perfectly fine if you do a small project. But then if we talk about governance at a higher degree, this is not fine.
But this is fully permissionless, and you can always have the option. I think it's pluralist actually, because you can always have the option to create a node that competes with the node that you want that you're kicked out of, or I think the entire structure is permissionless, so it's not. I don't see the plutocratic nature of it.
Anyone with a lot of money can come and say, I'll just fund so much more on this project, the other one will never happen, which is perfectly fine in a small structure or in a business. You know, you give money to directors and each director spend the money however they want. I wasn't sure if you were going for a tool, if you're going for a philosophical governance topic, and a philosophical governance topic is the rich oppressing the poor.
But there's no oppression. It's a free entry and free exit. You can create your own coin. You can create your own node. You can create a node where the rich guy cannot participate.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool.
Yeah, but ultimately, like if you want to change something, right, someone has to pay for it, and you cannot posture here. The only thing to affect change is to pay for it, right? So it's a lot more sincere and more clear.
Depends how you want to come up to a consensus, right? That's one way of getting a consensus. But yeah, if you base it on the fact that everyone has money and is this a project you want to fund? Yes, perfectly fine premise. As a method of governance where some resources are shared and pulled together, which is the case of a government, it becomes more of an issue as saying people who have more resources at the beginning, they may oppress the welfare of other people. They may, which is not what you're doing, right? But this is a tool. So just the question was what kind of usage you were thinking of, which is perfectly fine for a small project where you look funding externally. Yeah,
I still don't think I buy the oppression part. I am very against oppression, I'm not yeah.
Well, I'm going to build a road where your house is right now. I don't want your house to exist and have so much more money than you that I'm going to fund this project. So you move out and I build my road. You don't have enough money, so my project is going to go through.
I mean, your project goes to organically anyway. I cannot stop you from your project going. But like you're starting from the assumption that coin rules over that land, right?
Yeah.
When I see a world where there's thousands of coins, where you use like coins as TikTok, for example.
Yeah. So the original question I was trying to figure out is, you could see a model where if you want to be more fair, if you're trying to decide between 5 or 6 different projects, and maybe that's a little different from what you're trying to do, is you allocate some coins to people, and then you say, not everyone's going to vote, let's say, 10 coins on each project, and you're going to end up with differentiated options, which is this one has the highest votes, so this one can go first, etc.
But this is not votes; it's direct funding,
yes,
right? And it's actually calculated per second, and it's continuous. And if you don't like it, you can leave, or But that's a bad argument. I know how that's a bad argument, but in the world that I see, I think you're making an assumption that there's already an asymmetry of power that's very big from the start.
Is it not?
Otherwise, it's meritocratic.
And look at Bitcoin. Right? This is asymmetric. So that's a problem to take into consideration. Yes. How do you correct for this asymmetry, or is designed for this asymmetry, and that's perfectly fine?
Yeah, I'm not sure I get the problem. Sorry.
Okay.
Sounds like we're going to have a debate on that one at another conference. Any other questions or philosophical musings from the crowd, guys? Doesn't look like it. Okay, guys, thank you very much to Bogdan. Cheers.